there's 4 branches of government, and the 4th is called Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And they're stronger than the rest of the 3 of them. The question I get a lot on college campuses, and then we can get into the tech stuff, is that students that are in the middle, they come after this. This is the best case scenario at times, but it's not correct, where they say, well, yeah, the left has gone out of control, but the right has also gone really out of control. And I say to myself, what do you mean? There is no moral equivalency between the two. Where is right-wing Antifa? Where is...
Well, they'll tell you it's the KKK.
There's 45 of them, and every time they try to materialize anywhere, it's unilateral, uniform, and overwhelming denouncement of these people.
Right.
Just out of control denouncement.
Yeah, I think we should just hit that though, because if what happened a couple weeks ago with ICE, with the attack,
I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, or with Andy even, right? With Andy Ngo, who I had on. I mean, if either one of those things had come out of the right, whatever that is, whether
there would be a CNN Sunday night special.
Yeah, they'd be having a town hall where Marco Rubio would be getting strung up. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
And so they virtue signal a lot better than us. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to say we're like better people and we deserve all this, but boy, our worldview is better than them right now, 100%. Because if you're a member of Congress and you're asked a specific question, will you denounce Antifa, which for all intents and purposes in my mind is a domestic terror organization. They're a domestic terror organization. They should be treated as such. How do you assault a journalist like that with masks, with concrete milkshakes, send him to a hospital, and not be called a domestic terror? You have an organization, you have a hierarchy, you have a common meeting place. I mean, all the stuff that...
Because they're doing that dirty work.
Right, but everything the FBI... There's like a checklist that the FBI has of what a terror group is. They qualify all of them, domestic terror group. I mean, they have specific targets, right? They all this sort of thing. And yet, total silence amongst the left. Complete and total silence. And I'm rooting for people like Delaney and Andrew Yang, because Andrew Yang denounced it. Yeah. Andrew Yang had the best tweet, and then we'll get to the tech stuff. The best tweet. He said, and I think it was just kind of this very interesting observation. He has an IQ that's amazing. He's a really smart guy. He's misguided on the UBI thing, but that's okay. And he said, I notice conservatives follow a lot more liberals on Twitter than liberals follow conservatives on Twitter. Did you see this tweet?
Yeah, I saw it.
And I said, he's getting there. Give him 5 more months of this circus. He's going to have a different view of the left than he did a year and a half ago.
I completely agree. And then we're going to get to the disagreement stuff, but I'm with you on that, because he keeps, I had him in here, and I think he's
and then, by the way, your interview with him was fantastic.
Thank you.
Really good.
Not necessary to say.
But it's honest.
I think you're basically right, because even when I asked him what his progressive politics were, everything he said was about equality. I'm for gay marriage or something like that. And it's like, but that's not progressive anymore, because we've progressed to it. We've progressed to equality. So in my view, he really is an old school liberal. And yes, on some of the big government stuff and whatever you think about UBI, he's not there. But I think once he's done with this evil machine, he's gonna, in a weird way, he could end up being more right than most liberals. I think that probably is where he'll end up.
Well,
but wait, let's...
Okay, fine.
All right, I want to move to the disagreements. We've been too nice to each other here.
Geez, here we are.
You wrote a piece in the Washington Post about big tech a couple weeks ago. And everyone that's watching this knows that where I'm at right now is the libertarian side of me that thinks that the market can solve everything, or at least that the market is the best way to solve problems. Not that they're always going to be solved, but that's the best way. That's being pushed to its limit. The rubber is meeting the road. I think the tech companies have gotten so out of control with the bannings, with the shadow bannings, with the demonetizations, with algorithms that nobody seems to know how to control or are being manipulated, and I could go on and on with a zillion other things. Your argument basically was, yeah, I don't want the government doing anything, but here we are.
That's the big but.
That's the but. And now the but, of course, is that's where the problems start kicking in if you hold an ideal that markets are supposed to solve these things. So I'm not there. I'm just not there.
It's a really tough conversation, Dave. I'm so glad we're having it, because I'm a Milton Friedman guy. I'm a free market, free people.
Wait, New York Times had him on the cover. He's an alt-right hero.
No, you're right. That was the most ridiculous piece that I've seen.
My dad, 40 years, he's had the New York Times. I think even longer than I've been born. He had it for like 45 years, still subscribed. Nothing like seeing his son's head.
This was one of the most dishonest pieces of journalism I've ever seen. You have one guy, and it's just this pablum, thousands of words of nonsense. Anyway, that's a different thing at a different time.
I've invited the author on the show.
Milton Friedman.
Yeah.
I'm a Milton Friedman guy. I'm a Thomas Sowell guy. I believe markets do solve solutions. For those of you that are listening or watching that aren't sure what my view of markets are, it's that free people exchanging goods in a free society voluntarily, mutually cooperating as they see fit, will benefit society, benefit the individual, and that's essentially a market. So a couple things. In order for a market to operate, you also believe in private property. That's a big thing. So you have impartial courts that can adjudicate differences. So you're not an anarchist. I'm not an anarchist.
Yeah.
Adam Smith talked about the importance of impartial courts because you're going to have differences of properties and not just physical property, but intellectual property and all that. And also, of course, the price system. That's really, really important. Milton Friedman talked how prices are the language of how we communicate with each other. So if tomorrow Starbucks made every single cup of coffee $25, which is not inconceivable considering their upward...
You mean they're going to lower the prices?
Yeah, exactly. The upward trajectory that they're on for coffee, there's something to be said that less people will buy that coffee. And so that's how you communicate. No one actually some people might open their voice and be upset, but the silent regression from buying their coffee will be reflected in their balance sheet. And that's how we communicate value to value. Prices are super important. So I think the first thing when we talk about tech is we have to first admit we really don't have a market in tech. There's a couple reasons behind this. And then we have to talk about some of the problems that I think everyone admits. First of all, there's a lot of cronyism that exists between the big tech companies right now, whether it be government contracts, whether it be far too extended patents that are given to Google. We need to think about this. I think that patents, in a lot of ways, are anti-free market. And I think we should shrink the window of how long some of these patents are. So you said it the best. Mm-hmm. Google has this algorithm that no one can figure out, right? But they also have it patented. And they have it patented for a very long time. And so if it were to be put off the patent market, well, it's also made public. Mm-hmm. And someone could compete against it. So that's an interesting thing to think about, that there could be that they're actually hiding behind some of the government favors that are given to them.
Right, so it's a weird place to be, though, because you're sort of asking for government interference
I'll get to that.
with the hope of this back-end freedom thing.
Let's go to what we want.
Yeah.
I always tell our team at Turning Point USA, every time, what does success look like? Well, Charlie, success looks like 1,400 high school kids in D.C. in August. Great. How do we get there? We work backwards to where we are today. Let's do that. Why not?
Take me on this voyage.
What does success look like? Fair, free, and open platforms where different ideas can express themselves. Multiple tech companies, not 4, but dozens of tech companies competing for our interests that are able to, have these ideas present. Hopefully, an improving product over time, and hopefully a search engine that doesn't have 92% of the market share. I don't think that's a healthy thing. I just don't. I think even 40% would be a lot. 92%. So that's where success would look like a disaggregation, let's call it that, or a decentralization. I think that's probably a fair, you'd agree with that, right? Mm-hmm. And also you not having to battle YouTube nonstop and you not having to do all these things. You could actually focus on content creation. I have to ask you, Dave, how many hundreds of hours have you spent of wasted energy on this stuff?
Oh, it's been, I have to fight them publicly constantly.
Right.
It's not fun.
You, right?
Yeah, well, it's not fun. It's not that it's bad business because I'm putting out content that I end up losing money on. In a weird way, there are times where I'm doing the producers. The more things that I make, the more money I lose.
Yes.
Which is not fun. But also, it's just publicly, it's not fun to have to attack your own platform. But okay, so far I'm with you on the ideas, but now where we're going to have our problem is
here's the question.
The functional part.
The question is, so let's say we deregulate some of the patent stuff and all, but is it enough? And I'm at a place right now where Tucker Carlson said something really interesting to me, and it really stuck with me. He said, Charlie, I want you to think about this. Who is more powerful, the IRS or Google? And I immediately said the IRS, because that's what we conservatives believe. We believe that government has uniform power, and I defended it, I thought, pretty well. Google doesn't have the power of audits, Google can't put you in prison, all these, IRS can do all those sorts of things, right? And IRS can wreck your business. And Tucker retorted with a really interesting thing. He said, well, but Google can't shut down your business. I said, yeah, I guess that's right. And I debated a little bit. And Google can manipulate entire society to believe something that might not be true. And we went through the whole litany of how powerful Google was. And I thought about it for months. And I think that's a really important thing that we conservatives do. We actually are always challenging our positions. I think that's what's so healthy about our movement. And it hit me about a month and a half ago when I had my laptop open and I had my Gmail account watching YouTube, on my Google Calendar.
Yeah.
And I said, my goodness, they know everything about me. The IRS doesn't know crap. The IRS knows a couple bank statements, my taxes and my bank statements. that's a very small picture of my actual activity. And I thought to myself when I had this computer open, I said, what if one engineer in Google was flipping through Twitter and saw one of my tweets praising President Trump? And he said, screw this Charlie Kirk guy. And he goes to work tomorrow and he decides to look at everything about me. Do we know that's not happening?
I mean, I think we can go on the assumption that it is happening,
that's
actually.
really scary. That's more power than the NSA has. And by the way, we know that Google is so slanted in the wrong direction ideologically. We know they've shown regret for not doing enough in 2016. We know the political imbalance. Their political contributions were over $1 million to Hillary Clinton and $0 to Donald Trump in 2016 as far as political contributions. They fired James Damore. So here's the question. Is there a place for the federal government to get engaged or involved, tinker around the edges, or change, or do something to change the way that this is currently happening? And the piece I wrote in the Washington Post was first admitting how this could go wrong. So let's just, can I start there? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So
well, that's why I brought up the piece, because I think you did try to at least acknowledge this is the freaking murky road that this thing is.
I'm struggling with this because the free market's so great. I believe this. I see this beautiful society created by the free market. And I say, but what about these companies? So I'm struggling. And that's a good thing to struggle, because then you actually might find reasonability somewhere. And so the first piece is, let's see how this could go wrong, okay? More times than not, when you apply regulation on a very, very big company, the regulation ends up getting written by those companies, the regulation gets lobbied for by those companies, there's last-minute, middle-of-the-night changes being put by senators and K Street law firms and lobbyists that end up actually benefiting the very company that it's supposed to regulate.
Right. It ends up hurting the competition that's trying to upstart because they can never keep up with the regulations. Okay, so now you're giving me stuff that I'm with you.
I talked about this in the piece, right? So I opened up with this, right? And so let's take a very agreeable example is Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank, for those of you that don't know, that are watching this, was a banking regulation bill passed out of the 2008 financial crisis, authored by Chris Dodd and Barney Frank, to try to regulate the big banks, to try to never allow the 2008 financial crisis to happen again. But essentially what it would be is, he's like, okay, I lost my arm in a horrible motorcycle accident, and I'm taking Pepto-Bismol for a stomach ache. It's like the complete wrong treatment. They had nothing to do with this. So they apply the wrong treatment to an ill-advised, poorly analyzed problem, and what ended up happening was the big 5 or 6 banks, Goldman, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, these massive banks that have trillions and trillions, tens of trillions in dollars of assets collectively, they lobby for regulation that they understand that they can comply with.
Now they're even too bigger to fail.
And what had happened? You now have Wells Fargo, you have BOA, you have JP Morgan, with stock prices that have never been higher, with more power than they've ever had. And what did Dodd-Frank do? We have seen a massive decrease and decline in community banking. Massive. Because for the local bank of Sacramento, let's just take a local bank of Sacramento that might have $250 million in deposits. And they might do a couple million, let's say 12 million in revenue. They've got some good loans out, healthy balance sheets, all that. But all of a sudden, a federal regulator walks in with an encyclopedia of new regulation they have to comply with. And they say, well, this is going to cost you $800,000 in law costs. Well, sorry, this is the new law. Well, $800,000 for JP Morgan is called lunch. That's nothing. I mean, it's nothing then. So what ends up happening is it penalizes it. So I'm admitting I'm being vulnerable.
Okay, so this is a huge concession on your part.
It's a part of the piece, right? I'm being vulnerable of how I've come to this, because I first want to just tell the audience that I'm not dealing in absolutes here at all. I'm dealing in very much of there's context and there's texture to this. So anyway, so how regulation could be a weapon used. And you saw this with Facebook, though. You saw this with Facebook, where Facebook actually put forth this proposal of how to protect people's privacy. That was like 450,000 pages of garbage that was basically written by Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg of how their company can thrive and rule the world. Okay, that's stupid. So then the question is, how do we get to that success? And I think what I wrote in the piece is the number one thing that we can do is change section 602. I think that's the number. It's the 206 or 602. I can be dyslexic at times. So I think it's 602 in the technology code that was passed in the 1990s. that allows these technology platforms to hide behind the label of being a platform when they're really acting like a publisher. So the Rubin Report, right? Any of these companies, you guys are publishers, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm responsible for the content.
Right. So if you look at that
put
camera
out there
and say something horribly libelous about somebody and publish it behind your name, you could be held accountable for that libel suit. Okay. Now, a platform, right? A platform is supposed to be an open forum where no one can be held accountable to it. However, where they get around it is where they have these community standards, right?
Right, which is the sneaky way of, we're going to kind of curb out who we don't exactly want in there.
So trying to break outside the binary box, since the piece I've thought of this more and I've gotten some really good feedback on it, there can be a third box created too. It's like you can have a platform, publisher, and then social network. Because they're not either, they're definitely acting like a publisher, they're pretending to be a platform, but why not create a third box and have an internet bill of rights? That's an interesting idea. I'm not saying that's 100% what I believe, but why not? Because when you're consuming so much information online and so many people their livelihoods are online and we're gravitating towards online, what's to say that there shouldn't be that kind of third box? And so there's a very aggressive community that says regulate these companies, throw the regulators at them. It's very tempting to do that because you want to seek vengeance against these companies that are doing these horrible, horrible things. But my whole thing right here is that something needs to change governmentally. We're at that point. What that something is, I'm open-minded to. I proposed in the Washington Post piece that got a ton of play. Got more mail from that piece, I think, than any other thing I've written. Is you got the 602 code is the opening. That's where I think we have to change it.
So so I like the platform versus publisher debate, and I think you're right. They are acting now as publishers, not open platforms. So I think there's something there. I think where I would still be struggling is, so I can get you with you on the Internet Bill of Rights. I would love that. If you're a publisher, let's say, if you're a platform, as they're pretending to be,
you have to abide by
then you have certain things to abide by. But so that sounds good, right? Road to hell's paved with good intentions. Now we've got something that sounds good, but then to enforce it, what are you going to do? What is the government going to do? Suddenly you have a gajillion bureaucrats running around these companies, making sure that they're doing all of those things. And it's like, do the middle management government bureaucrats have any insight into how these companies operate internally?
I could tell you what you do. You create a division of the Department of Justice that's focused on internet civil rights. It's no different than free expression that was challenged in the 70s and 80s in a lot of different, in the gay community. There was huge controversy in the 1980s in California in particular. A lot of lawsuits that stemmed out of that, and there was a creation eventually in the Department of Justice that focused on. So how is it any different, Dave, when you get the kind of penalization that you've gotten on social media, or when Crowder gets demonetized? How is that not a violation of your freedom of expression? And someone said with our private company.
I don't want to force that baker to bake the cake.
Of course, I completely and totally understand that. But then you are a publisher. You're discriminating. If you want, the point of being a publisher is you don't have to take everyone's piece.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
That's the whole idea of being a publisher. And so the other interesting thing, Dave, the question to challenge you is at what point, what's the breaking point for you? Because what if Google shut us all out? Shapiro, Crowder, Knowles, Clavin, Daily Wire, me, Prager, overnight. Would then we say we go after them with government? And here's the other question I have for you, Dave.
Well, first of all, let me just answer that.
What's stopping them?
Right. So I've been posing this actually because this is what I've been talking about mostly at colleges lately, and I posed that question. If they were to digitally assassinate me today, if they all of them just agreed, Twitter down, YouTube down, Facebook down, and Instagram down, would that be a violation of my civil rights? And I think it's as close as you can possibly get to yes. They could just take you out of what the new public sphere is. And especially the way that technology is evolving so fast, you could almost argue that your ability to be on those platforms in some weird way is almost paramount than your ability to just exist on a day-to-day basis, which is a sort of, very Philip K. Dick to think of, type of thing to think about.
So my question for you, Dave, is, are we there yet? And if not, when will we be? And I'm there.
Okay, so let's say
I see it.
So Tucker and I have done this several times on his show. So let's say I grant you that. Then explain this to me. Trump happens to be favorable to some of the people that you're mentioning here. He's on the right side of this issue, I would say. What happens now? Trump loses in 2020. You've got President Elizabeth Warren, who wants to, it's code 230. My guys are telling me, by the way, not 602. See, we fact check here on the Rubin Report. That wasn't even dyslexia. That was just a made up.
Yeah, it wasn't made up. It was mismemory. Okay, sorry. I got all these numbers.
You've just lost all credibility for it, and I really thought you were doing well this hour. No, all right. Now we've got President Elizabeth Warren, who would be more than happy as a far-left progressive to do everything that she can to have the government take over everything, and now you've already handed her this power. Now I think I know what your answer is going to be. She's going to do it anyway, whether Trump moves on it or not. The left will come for it anyway. But that still seems crazily dangerous to me, and a terrible precedent.
Well, it depends on how we structure this in a way. And again, I think the challenge is whenever possible, we're going back to the doctrine of Adam Smith. So here's the question, Dave. Private property. You have private property rights, don't you? We all do.
Yeah.
So aren't all your videos you put on YouTube your property? And you've monetized them. And so under the Adam Smith doctrine of markets,
well, technically, I don't know if I actually just honestly don't know off the top of my head with whatever crazy thing I've signed with YouTube. Are the videos that I put there?
So that's an interesting question.
Yeah,
you definitely have the intellectual property. Is definitely
right,
yours.
the IP, sure.
All of this production cost, all that is yours.
Yeah,
and you've monetized it. And I think, from what I understand, you've gone into a cooperative with YouTube. I'm guessing that they have the rights to it once you sign over the rights. But isn't there an argument to say, like, but this is my video, I've created this? Whether that's been adjudicated or not, I'm not sure. But I think the solution has to go through the courts. And this is me believing the courts have been highly politicized in many, many recent years. The long-lasting legacy of Donald Trump will be hopefully the rebalancing the federal judiciary away from slanted radicalism and towards hopefully kind of very restrained, what's the word, textualism, being more textualist. And so that's the question. Is so if Elizabeth Warren starts to go on a rampage, hopefully you can be able to sue, and you can use the courts to uphold these things. And that's under Obama, there were decisions that he was not crazy about.
So your basic belief, if we were to whittle all this down, would be that the three branches of government would still be able to function in a way.
Hopefully,
that would protect us from the government overreach.
Let me go a step further.
Yeah,
there's 4 branches of government, and the 4th is called Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
and they're stronger than the rest of the 3 of them. That's where I'm at, where we have a super government that's been created, where the Kingdom of D.C. is no longer the most powerful fiefdom in this Game of Thrones. That the power is in Silicon Valley. And this is where Tucker is on this issue. This is where Dennis Prager is on this issue. I mean, the IRS, to give you an idea, the IRS, they don't even accept emails. You have to send a snail letter to them, like a snail mail letter to them. Again, they might be morally corrupted, but these guys at Google, I mean, they're literally building new limbs for people.
Right.
I mean, they have driverless cars, highly technological people. And so, and Dave, here's my question for you as a libertarian. Do you support, looking retrospectively back in history, the trust busting that Teddy Roosevelt did in the 1900s?
Right, so I get it. I mean, this is the slippery slope thing always, right? There's a libertarian argument that would be against the Civil Rights Act that I think is a
I disagree with it.
No, so I disagree with it too, and I'm not for relitigating it, but I think there is a libertarian argument there. But this is where I would say this is the difference between basically a classical liberal and a libertarian. I do find some utility for the state. So nothing that you're saying to me, nothing you're saying is completely outlandish.
Sure.
And I think if anything, for whatever disagreement there is here, in a weird way, we need to keep that disagreement. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think that's totally fair.
That way it keeps either side from...
It keeps an account and not getting too far and not allowing your emotion run, and I think to keep it in check, so it's a very interesting conversation because the growing in the kind of conservative libertarian world and reading Hayek and reading Rothbard, I've been told my entire life, and I agree with this, up until the last couple months, where I've told the true monopoly is government. And that's just not true anymore. We have companies that can do things the government cannot do.
Yeah.
And that's never been the case in human history. It's just never been the case. It just hasn't. And where you have a government that can shut off the entire lines of communication for millions of people. You have a government that can say, oh, we want everyone to think that Sam's Deli is closed tomorrow. So everyone Googles Sam's Deli, oh, it's closed, even though it's open.
Yeah.
You have an entire super government that's been created that can manipulate the entire behavioral pattern of a society. And so if we can admit that's stronger than the government, then do we use government against it? And again, I admit it, although how that could go wrong, you could actually end up making those companies more powerful. Yeah. But I want to go back to where I saw what a success looks like. And this has to be like the moonshot, we're going to get to the moon. And this is the advice I gave to President Trump publicly, where I think the president should issue a big challenge, saying to the entrepreneurs of America, go start the next tech company. I'm going to use your platform. I'm going to use as many platforms as I can touch. Go do it right now. Go raise the capital. I believe in you. Almost like creating entrepreneurial activity around this.
Well, Kirk, as you know, we're taping this at the end of July. Right now, this is going to air in August because I'm off the grid for August. You might be interested in perhaps an announcement that someone might be making at the beginning of September. I don't want to say too much. But if you want to ping that Trump guy and tell him.
Sure, but yes, I love all that stuff. And I'm not saying any of these things are exclusive. Yeah. I'm saying we've identified the problem. We understand the significance of it. We understand how we could solve it incorrectly. Because the first thing you do in medicine is what? First, do no harm. Yeah. It's the first thing. So we have this problem, and we could end up actually making it worse, and that would be horrible, wouldn't it? Imagine if we passed all this regulation. Imagine if we had this crazy bill passed through Congress, we felt great about it. Then 18 months later, all of a sudden we find out that Google got all these last-minute provisions in, it's not being enforced, and they're ending up not 92% of search results, they have 99% of search results, and everyone gets taken off the market. And that would be really, that would be defeating.
The road to hell, man. All right, listen, we have to wrap, unfortunately. Okay. Well, but obviously we're going to do this again. And, look, if we ended up getting booted from the platforms, I guess we'll just have to keep doing this in person until...
We could text this video to people or something, I don't know.
They'll take us down. Thank you, Charlie. For more on Charlie, follow him at Charlie Kirk 11. And don't forget to click that subscribe button and make sure the bell is solid to get all the notifications for our videos. Thanks for watching, everybody.